Today, we are making the ultimate AliExpress PS2. Not the ultimate PS2, the best PS2 that I can make using parts only from AliExpress. You can already see a couple that are on the table right now. We have an HDMI mod from High Speed Edo. We have a Bluetooth controller port mod. So you can use the actual controller ports or you can use Bluetooth, which is nice. And of course, we're going to be putting an SSD in here, all that fun stuff. So let's get started. Shout out to my friend Petey, aka James, for giving me this PS2. This is his old PS2. We're going to be modding it today. He said he didn't want it. He gave me like a whole bucket full of old game stuff. Super grateful for it. Thank you so much, Petey. This is going to be put to good use. Now, I will say I have already gone in here and cleaned it up because just like with the PS2 Slim mods, you need to know a specific number on the motherboard. And to find that number, you pretty much have to completely tear it apart. And if you're a regular viewer of the channel, you've probably seen this screw somewhere on my mat for the past like month or so. Actually, probably the past 2 months or so, because I don't know where the screw goes, but it's from this PS2, and otherwise I put every single screw back. So that's part of the mission today is finding that screw, at least where that screw belongs. Once we remove all of these screw covers, which oddly harder than normal today, there we go. Sometimes you just need a little flathead screwdriver bit, pop those suckers right off. But once we get all those screw covers off, there are 8 of them, we can unscrew the 8 Phillips screws. I believe these are Phillips 1, maybe Phillips 2. It's like the basic Phillips screwdriver bit. So you probably have one of these in your house. And when you take these 8 screws out, you're gonna want to remember where they go. These 4 longer ones are gonna be these 4 here. And then these 4 are all the same size for the ones on the stair step over here. Then we can flip this back over and lift up from the back here. Kind of shimmy it forward towards yourself. And be careful because a lot of these are plugged in this ribbon cable to the power buttons over here. So don't just yoink it off. Be careful here. And then we can set it off to the side like this. I mean, honestly, from here, we're pretty much just removing everything. So if you just want to skip ahead a little bit and remove all of the screws, you can, but I will go screw by screw here. We're going to start with these 2, and then I'll do this one for the fan over here. And then there's a clip up front over here that we can take something to pry it open so we can get that disk drive out. But again, don't just yoink it out because there are a lot more ribbon cables that we need to take care of here. I forgot to plug the fan back in. Don't do that. But since this will be connected for you, don't just yoink this out either, but you will need to lift that up and maybe lift this up. And I think I found that missing screw. Yep, it definitely went there. But we want to lift this piece out, which we need to remove that screw too. We need to lift this out so we can get this up. And again, bunch of ribbon cables on the back and the front. So there's a bunch of ribbon cables right here that we are just going to unplug. And this will be a giant pain in the butt later down the line. And then we should be able to slide this ribbon cable out so we can fully put the top shell away. And then we can lift this up and we can unplug this ribbon cable by pulling down these 2 things. And then we can fully remove the disk drive, which has a disk in it. I've also not tested to make sure that this PS2 works. We're just hoping, which is not great. From here, we should actually be able to remove the controller port by lifting this tab up and then sliding this ribbon cable out, putting this off to the side. And then I think we can fully lift the rest of the console out of the shell. Yes, we can. I'm gonna set that over to the side and put the bottom shell away. Don't think we can yet remove the top shell. No, we cannot. So pretend that my fan is still connected. I'm gonna put it off to the side, but you will have to juggle your fan for a little bit. We're gonna flip this over. Be careful not to touch any of the points on this board here because this is the power supply. You don't want to touch any of these in case any of these large capacitors still have a charge to them. They could zap you, they could hurt you. Okay? Okay. So we're going to take out these 4 screws for the power supply, and then we can grab it by the sides of the board and then pull up, and then that is our power supply. See, that thing, that's going to pack a lot of power. That's probably the biggest capacitor I've ever seen, at least in a video game console. So don't touch those. Also, side note, do not lose this piece of plastic here that prevents that board from shorting to the metal shielding. Very important. But we are going to have to remove it and put it off to the side. Just do not forget to reinstall that. And then we've got some smaller screws we can take care of here. We can also slide off the drive bay and access a few more screws. These are still all Phillips bits. Here is where your fan connector is, so you can just carefully remove that. Be very careful and try not to pull it by the wires. Try and pinch it out where the plastic is. It's very hard. I know it's a stupid small connector, but not too long ago, I was working on a different PS2 and the fan broke. Well, I ripped the wires out of the connector, ended up having to rip the connector out of the board and solder the wires directly to the board. Not the most fun, but it ended up working anyways. Carefully, as best you can, carefully remove that because you're going to have a hard time doing the rest of this if you can't remove that. Anyways, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, 9 screws to take care of. Most of them are silver. These 2 are gold. Remember that. And then we should be able to just easily lift this metal shielding up. Okay, it's somewhat easily. I guess the board's going to stay with it, but the bottom part came off no problem. We can slide that off to the side. And then we should, there we go. Now it lifts out. Now we have our board completely separated from everything else. And now our PS2 is fully disassembled. I mean, I guess you could argue that I need to remove the 2 ribbon cables that are sticking out, but I don't care. We're going to leave them there. This number right here, it is also right here. I'm going to go over to the computer. Here is the AliExpress listing for this mod. There are 4 options for this mod. You have to buy the correct one. This is specifically for the fat model, and it's specifically for GH19, 23, 22, or 26, which is some of the 5,000 models and some of the 3,000 models. Then we can scroll all the way down. It'll tell you exactly which ones are compatible and where you can find the number. So we can scroll really far down. The first one is GH22. So I'm going to scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll and keep scrolling until we find GH19, which is my specific board. Now, it will be slightly different for each of these, but for the most part, if you're watching this video, you should be able to get through the majority of it. But take everything I say with a grain of salt because it might be slightly different for you. So look at the written guide as you're following along with what I'm doing to double check that you should be doing exactly what I'm doing or maybe something slightly different. Okay? For the most part, it's going to be the same. I promise. They have us starting with the trimming. I like to do the trimming last because if I can't complete the mod, there's no point in doing the trimming. So we'll save that for later. But thankfully, you only have to trim this piece and then part of the metal shielding. We are going to have to remove the SPDIF port and a couple of capacitors, it looks like. Let's start with removing this port here because this is going to be interesting. Now, I do have a fancier soldering iron that's like a solder sucker and a soldering iron in one. I say fancier, it's very cheap. I also bought it on AliExpress. I will link that down below. But for at least this portion, I will just do it with my soldering iron to show you how to do it if you don't have other fancy tools like me. Again, it's not fancy. But when I do this for the controller port, but when I do the controller port stuff, I will be using that solder sucker. So What I like to do for desoldering things like this with my soldering iron is I like to get out some flux. I like to use flux pretty much every time I solder, but I'm gonna load this bad boy up with flux. And I like to set my iron to a higher temperature. Right now I'm gonna start with 330, but I may up that to 350 C if it's being difficult. But we only have 3 pins here, so it shouldn't be too hard to mess with. And I'm going to add some fresh solder to all of these and honestly kind of like try and bridge them so I can keep all of the solder heated as I'm trying to grab it from below and pull the port out just like that. Boom. That was actually super easy. I also didn't realize that the optical port only had 3 pins, but we have that removed. Then I'm going to clean my iron, just clean the tip off a little bit, get all that excess solder out of there. And then I'm going to take my Goot wick and remove all of that extra solder that we just added there just to clean it up. It's not like we really need to have all the solder removed because we're not going to add anything there. We're just removing that port. I just want to clean it up a little bit. And now we have that desoldered and that area is free because that's where the HDMI is going to come out. Now on the side of the board where the ports stick up, I should say, we're going to find this chip here and we're going to remove these two components and these two components, which is going to be slightly hard to do, but I think we can do it. So for this, I'm going to do pretty much the same thing. We do want to be careful because this is a very tight area, but I am going to put flux over the top of both of those chips, both of these chips. I keep calling them chips. They're just capacitors, and I don't know what the dark one is. I'm going to, still at 330C, add a little bit of fresh solder, and I'm putting my iron on top of it, trying not to touch the pins of this chip. And I just want to get solder on top so I'm heating both sides, and then that component will stick to my iron, and then I can just wipe it off on my mat, and then do the same thing over here to this guy, and boom. Those two are clear. Then we can do the same thing over here. Maybe add a little bit more solder. Oh, there we go. I was about to say something else, but it eventually came off. But I guess I'll do it for this one. If it's not wanting to like attach to your soldering iron, or it's just not really wanting to move, you can very gently put some tweezers down here, just one end. And then as you're heating up both sides, just very gently push it over, push it out of the way, and then it'll just take itself off. Don't do it too hard because if you're not heating both sides, it won't move and you might end up ripping it off and ruining the board. Let it do its thing. If it's not working, you're not doing it right. Keep moving the iron around. Eventually you'll get there. It's maybe doesn't sound like the best advice, but anyways, I'm going to clean my iron before I forget because I don't want a bunch of solder on my iron as we move into the next part. There are a lot of colors on this graphic right here, but I'm just going to focus on the chip for now. Okay, I'm like actually genuinely annoyed by this. The way that the two ends of the ribbon cable are soldered down are just not very good. Anyways, from here, we're going to take the included Kapton tape and we are going to cover up some areas because we're going to be doing some very small soldering and we don't want to accidentally have these connect to other places where they shouldn't be. Like there's a bunch of vias right next to these components we're going to solder to. So without covering those components, we're going to cover that area with Kapton tape. I covered these few areas with Kapton tape. I think that's all we need to do. And honestly, we probably don't need to do that, but it's just a nice safety precaution. You don't really want to mess this up. So I would take the few seconds to cover those up and then we can move on. We are going to line this up as best as we can with these components here. This is going to be extremely difficult because of these components right behind it. Normally, I like to put a piece of Kapton tape across this way from where I'm soldering the biggest portion. But because of those two components and having to angle it, I decided to go on both sides here to secure it. And it's lined up, but I am going to have to angle it as I'm soldering. You'll see in a minute. It's not going to be the most fun. But I'm going to turn my iron back on and I'm going to load this whole line with flux, and I'm just gonna add the tiniest little bit of solder like that to my tip to make this a little easier. And I'm setting my iron to 330, and I'm actually gonna angle the board a little bit because of the USB ports sticking out. It's a little off camera, but it kind of messes with my grip. And now I'm just going to try and push this down gently with my tweezers and add that solder to these components. I'm going to actually grab it now and try and push it forward a little bit, and then just keep adding solder and just drag soldering across all of these components until it looks like everything has an even amount of solder and everything is connected. And honestly, it's pretty hard to tell, but I think the best way will be to remove these extra strips of Kapton tape and be careful not to actually rip the rest of your ribbon cable. And since it's not easily removing itself, looks like I did a pretty good job. Obviously, pulling on this ribbon cable very gently, but still pulling on it does not mean that I perfectly soldered that part, but it at least proves that I connected it to the board, at least somewhere. So from here, I'm going to rotate the board again because, again, the stupid USB ports are kind of in my way. But I'm going to do the same thing to this side and then to that side to fully get it connected to the chip before we move on. And I know it's going to be really hard to see here, but on this bottom part here, you want to have the first 4 pins not soldered, and then the 5th pin will be the first one you solder to. And it looks like I did a pretty darn good job of lining all this up, so it shouldn't be an issue. Just putting a little flux there, holding it down with my tweezers, just doing the same thing we just did, but over here. But I'm also going to try and be careful not to accidentally remove these 2 capacitors here. That looks pretty darn good to me, so we're going to go to the other side. And this is a little bit crooked on my side, so it's going to be a little bit harder, but we want the first 2 pins from the left not soldered to. Then that 3rd pin will be the first one we solder to. So I'm going to kind of pull this, again, gently pull this part of the ribbon cable further out so it hopefully lines up a bit more. It looks like it is. I need to add just a little bit more solder to my tip. That's way too much. So I'm just going to put that dab down, and I'm going to clean my iron, and then I keep making the focus go out of whack. I'm so sorry, but keep just working at it. I'm going to put some more flux down, hopefully clean this up a little bit more. I'm going to try to push this over again. I'm sorry, I'm just going to have to fully lean over it to do this properly. And you saw me do it a bunch on the other side. So I think that this could be better. So I'm tempted to clean this up. Okay. I do need to clean this up a little bit more. So, actually I'm not because I think it's just fine. I got to believe in myself. If I keep micromanaging it, then it's just, I'm never going to get anywhere. So this is probably good enough. We're going to roll with it. If yours looks like this, great. Let's move on. Now, I'm pretty sure everything that I've done so far will be the same across all of the models. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it's all the same so far. However, I know the rest of it will be different because we're going to solder a bunch of wires to a bunch of different points on the board, and those points are going to be scattered throughout the board in different spots. So what I'm going to do is put more flux on all of these gold circles, add just a little bit of solder to all of them. I'm also going to do this 3-volt pad, but I don't think that we need to do it for this one. And then I'm going to put some flux on this part of the capacitor and just connect this capacitor to the ribbon cable, just like that. Okay. From here, we can add a wire to each of those circles, but I'm going to do it one at a time because all of these wires are red, and it'll be easier to solder both ends of the wire to where they need to go as we, go through them, instead of soldering wires to each of those circles and then having 8 wires just hanging about. We're going to start from the top left with the 5-volt line. So I'm going to add a wire to this pad, and then it is not very far to go straight to this pin right here. So a little flux, a little solder, and attach the wire. And right next to that, we have WS, whatever that means, which is Actually, these next three are going to be three of these pins on this chip right here. So we can go ahead and put flux down right there. I would look at your iron, see how much solder you've got on your tip. I'm going to actually remove just a little bit. Well, I have to remove it all and then just add a tiny bit. And again, be very careful not to accidentally remove or bridge any of the components near it, but we're just getting these three pins here, and I will solder this one to the third from the right, or I guess the second from the left, depending on how you think. And then the next wire will be the clock, CLK, and then the next one for data, and boom. Just gonna check now to see if you bridged anything. And then from here, we can go to the bottom side and start doing these ones, which these ones are going to be a little bit tougher to solder to. We're going to be taking wires from here and bringing them all the way down to over here. So we actually do need that length of wire. So I'm going to start with the leftmost one, adding a wire there, and then we can bring it down. And then you'll see these two resistors here, and then there's a component right above it. We're going to solder to the right side of that component. So put a little flux, a little dab will do ya. And then I don't like to have my iron down on those little components for too long, so I don't accidentally remove them like we were purposely removing them earlier. And then I'm just going to angle that wire out of the way now that it's soldered down and try and get it out of the way of that component there. Okay. Just didn't want any accidental bridging between these two. Then the next one from the left, the next pad from the left, which is CS, is going to go to the top left pin of this component. So again, a little flux, a little bit of new solder, and then trying to connect that wire to only that top left pin of this component, which I think I did. And it's pretty snug in there, so we're good. Next wire for DO, or maybe D0, I think it's DO, is going to be to this component on the top right there. So again, a little flux, a little dab of solder, and then connecting the wire to that pad. And then the last one, at least I think it's the last one, because again, we still have that 3-volt line that doesn't really connect anywhere. I don't know if we need to connect it. DI, or maybe D1, I'm pretty sure it's DI, is going to be to the left side of this component. Little solder, little flux, and then connect the two. It looks like only for the 26 models do you need to actually do soldering for that 3-volt line. Interesting. Okay, so we can actually put the soldering iron away. We're done. If you want to, you can cover up all of these spots that we soldered to. And I think I will actually mostly just try to wrangle all of the wires so they're not in the way of any screw holes or anything like that, and definitely not on the ground plane. And I think that is good enough. For now, I'm going to move this out of the way. I'm going to get this piece out, as well as the thicker metal shielding here. And we're going to orient it like this, because we're going to be removing this metal piece here. And then we're going to be trimming up the optical port. So you can actually bend this with our fingers, but it's going to be a little easier to use the proper tools. So I'm going to go grab the proper tools. A lot of the time I do like to just use my flush cutters to bend this stuff, but this is a bit thicker. I don't think I can actually flush cut this. I think it's going to be too thick. Yeah, it's just too thick. I just grabbed some pliers, and I like to bend the these parts straight first. Like if there's any extra bends before we actually need to rip it off, then that way I can just go like this, and it should just break off at the bend. Now, definitely be careful not to touch that. If you want to end up using the remainder of your Kapton tape there or anything else, to make sure you don't actually scrape that and cut your finger or any other piece of you, might not be the worst idea, because it might be sharp. So I will put this off to the side for a second, and then I am just going to take my flush cutters. I'm going to trim it to like halfway between here, and then do the same over here, but probably not halfway, but like about the same thickness as this, like right about there, maybe halfway between this wall and the circle. And then we can cut that and wiggle that off, and then cut this and wiggle that off. And that's probably bigger than it needs to be, but hey, one of the easiest trims ever. Hallelujah. I really hate having to like just sand and sand and sand, or even worse, sometimes having to get out the Dremel to make things easier. I mean, it makes things easier, but it's just like, I hate sanding and like just like the dust flying, man. If I can just flush cut it out, awesome. But it doesn't look like they actually made it any like lower. I think they just widened it. I mean, it should just fit in there. Boom. Actually, definitely made it a little too thick, but I don't care. I'm not looking for accuracy. This is the ultimate AliExpress PS2, not the ultimate PS2. Now we can start to put all of this back together. Actually, you know what? I lied. Now we can move into doing the PS2 controller port. So if you are only here for the HDMI, you can skip ahead. But I mean, I guess I'm doing it in like a tutorial style, but I'm not really meaning for the whole video to be a tutorial, if that makes any sense. Just pulling that off there. And I don't know if this plastic actually comes off or not. I don't think it does. So I'm going to get out that other soldering iron that I was talking about. Looks a little something like this. And it doesn't have like a temperature gauge or anything on it. It is very, very basic, but it will allow me to literally just hold it there, press this down, and then press this button, sucks the solder right up. So I'm going to let that heat up a little bit. And while it's heating up, I will just put flux on every component that we need to desolder. That's the joke. All of it needs to be desoldered. Okay. I don't know if this is actually warm enough because, again, there's no gauge or nothing. So I'm going to push this down and we will put it over one of these. Yeah, it's hot enough, I think. I'll hold it there for a second and press the button. And I'm just going to be doing this like over and over again. So I'm probably going to time lapse through this. Okay, now it may not fit. We might need to clean it up a little bit more, but well, actually, I know we need to do some drilling. So let's do that, I guess. We have fully removed the board finally, but now we need to do this to the board. So I'm going to take this and just drill through. Beautiful. Then I'll do this the opposite way this time. I drill 2 holes. I'm not exactly sure how clean that hole needs to be, but definitely needs to be bigger. So I'm going to sand it out. My absolute favorite part. So there's like some crucial steps that, one, I should have looked ahead maybe a little bit more to figure out, but 2, some things they just like don't really show, and why tutorials like this can help. But we need to take this out after thinking, wow, I feel like I've done everything I can. And I pretty much have, but there are some things that we need to trim off of these guys, which I'm almost like, do we really need these guys anymore? I just want to put this back on now at this point. But we need to trim these ends off, which is just going to require me using flush cutter. Okay. And also, they show you like you need to trim these holes, but they don't show you that you need to trim this whole block back, essentially. So I'm just going to take the flush cutters and trim this up. This is very brittle plastic, but you can see in this picture how low this needs to actually go. So I'm just pretty much going to cut it flat, honestly. Okay, now we should be able to put these back in theory. Slide those in. And then we're still not done. We need to trim these 2 off. And now we should be able to do this, he says with not much confidence in his voice. What are we getting stuck on? I think it's back to this isn't trimmed enough for the button to get in there. So I think we're in. Every hole has a pin through it. Oh, finally, dude. I got nothing. I got absolutely nothing for tips, for tricks, nothing. That was horrible. And if I knew it was going to be that horrible, I would not have done this mod. I haven't even completed it yet. And I'm already like, nope, I don't recommend this. This is stupid. Okay, let's solder this back together and move on. I've been recording for over 2 hours. So for here, I'm just going to load all of these up with flux and add solder to each and every point. Be careful not to accidentally bridge or remove any of the components around these pins, because there are definitely more things that you can harm on this board than the original. And I'm nearing the end of my solder, but I think everything is now fully soldered down and everything should work. If it doesn't, I'm just going to cry and cry and cry and cry. I'm going to clean up this area a little bit and then we will reassemble everything. The rest of the stuff we're adding to this ultimate build is mostly external or something to just slip in the expansion expansion slot. Okay, that's cleaned up enough. When I get out all of the board stuff, I believe we're supposed to be not fully creasing, but somewhat bending this way to stick it up and through. And I believe, oh wait, no, it's gonna be like this. I believe this goes on like that. And you flip it over to here, grab the other half and put it like so. Yep, that looks right. And yep, we want our ribbon cable coming out like this. And then everything should line up for the most part. Make sure that there's nothing blocking this screw hole here. And then we can put all of these smaller screws back in. I'm going to start with the 2 gold screws that go over here. And then we can put the rest of the small silver ones in all of their spots. There we go. Then I'm actually going to flip it around this way to have it the same orientation as we tore it apart. And we can slot this in here because we do not want to forget this piece. There we go. It will click in, I promise. And before we put the drive cage on, I am going to plug in the fan. It will only go in one way, so do not force it. There we go. And then we can put the drive cage on like so, and it will somewhat click into place here. And then I'm going to put this off to the side for a second because unfortunately, the way they designed this, they have us putting the HDMI board on the power supply, which I think is kind of dumb. And this is where I get a little confused. I know I skipped ahead a little bit here, but the picture that they show us for my specific model does not line up with my power supply. So they kind of just don't really tell me how to install this. So that's fun. They did not think this through at all. And now I'm getting really frustrated because this is not, there's really no good way to install this. I could have the HDMI port stick like way out, or I could put it somewhere else and just have like, I don't have an HDMI extender or anything. It's like I really don't have a good way to install this. Yeah, I genuinely don't know how to install this one. I don't know where to put it because there really is not a spot for me to put this oddly shaped board. I think this was originally done for the PS2 Slim, and then they just made this board work for the fat PS2, and like, yep, they shipped it on one. I don't think they actually put them all back together when they were testing them because this is in the way. But even if I like put it here and like just stick an HDMI cable through there, once I put this in, we're gonna be shorting to something, or the heat sink for the power regulator is just in the way. Like there's genuinely not a spot on this motherboard for this thing. And if there is, I don't have a clue because their instructions, they use the same stupid picture for every power supply. So even this guy on a different listing has pictures because he ran into the same issue. So he has it in like that. So I'll just follow what he does, I guess. I don't know. I think what I'm going to have to do is trim this out. So I'll do exactly what I did on the other piece of plastic. I think I'm going to have to actually do it deeper. This is not going to look pretty, folks. I'm almost tempted to just do this and have it stick out. So I think it's just going to be easier on me. And I don't see why it wouldn't work. So I think I'm going to do that. I'm also just going to snip that off completely. This is how we're doing it, folks. Because I'm upset with high-speed Edo. And this is my way of getting back at them, I guess. All right. Should be able to slot the fan in here now. So I think it's going to be slightly pinched by the fan. I don't know why this AV out port is bent, but you know what? I really don't care anymore. I'm genuinely so frustrated right now. Okay, I've got 2 more of these, which I believe are both for the controller port. Let's work on that. And we can flip up this connector, sticker in there, and lock it down, and stick the ribbon cable down in there. Now we can screw these 2 down. And look at that, no more missing screws. Now we need to worry about plugging in all of these stupid little ribbon cables that are gonna be a giant pain in our butts. I should have replaced that battery. It's too late, I don't care. Oh my God, genuine frustration, by the way. Now I'm going to plug in this ribbon cable for the laser. Dude, why did they make these so tight? Why not just make them like a foot longer than they need to be? This isn't the one that's supposed to be hard, dude. Oh my God. Tell you what, this is going to be a great script. I do not recommend doing it that way, but somehow it was the easier way for me. I need about 8 hands to do this. I would like to scream at the designers for the PS2. This isn't even like an AliExpress thing. This is literally just me trying to plug in this stupid, horribly designed PS2 disk drive and motherboard and shell and all this stuff. And I think this is the last time I ever want to work on a PS2 in my life. But I said that about the Wii, and I'm about to do another Wii, not even a year later. Okay, I think that's in. I need to drill a hole in the top shell. I don't even know if they showed it in the tutorial. Dang it, they did. Okay. Oh, we're still not done. Thank God. What do we need to trim? We need to trim this post down here, okay? What else? Oh my God. Just drill it in the hole. This better be good enough. Guess what? It's not. My bottom hole not aligned well enough. Look at that freaking beauty. Can't wait to have a diagonal HDMI, at least the full-size HDMI. There's more to do, but I'm going to come back later when I'm a little less angry. All right, I've calmed down. It's been a couple days. I still have not tested this yet, but we got to install everything else. It's not just those 2 ugly, horrible mods that took 3 hours for me to install. I've got the PSX memory card Gen 2, which I believe is similar, if not the same thing as the MemCard Pro, which if you don't know, it is a memory card that uses a micro SD card slot. You can plug it into the computer and update it because there's updates for this thing. It works for the PS1 and the PS2. You do have to change it when you do go through, when you plug it into the PS1 versus the PS2. The plastic also seems a bit off. It plugs in. The plastic just does not line up with itself, though. It's kind of funny. I've got an old Free McBoot memory card. I do have a USB. I do have a USB with the updated OPL on it, so we can actually use an SSD because this is the network adapter, but it doesn't have the well, it's got the sticker here, but it's just the sticker. There's no actual network there, unfortunately. It does say hard drive, but I do have a 256 gigabyte Lexar SSD. I don't have that many PS2 games, and of course we do everything strictly legal by the book, no piracy, because we do not condone that here publicly. But I can just plug that in. I already preloaded my backups onto this SSD, but this is a little too loose for my liking, so I've got this drive bay thing. I think it's just probably 3D print. I'd be surprised if it was actually injection molding. Oh wow, no, that's not 3D printed. It's higher quality than I thought. But we should be able to just line those up. Yep. Probably don't even need to use all 4 screws since it's just an SSD. Oh, okay, I see. I was about to question how this secures to the expansion bay, but I see. Okay, that's just never ending spinning. So you can also secure it down here. I just chose the sides because it made the most sense to me. But plug this in just like I had it before. And we don't have to actually screw it to the adapter itself. That attach this to the PlayStation will secure everything into place. Just gotta line it up there. I should unplug this so I can fully twist this over. There we go. Nice and tight finally. Now we can plug in our janky HDMI cable. Hopefully this registers. Oh, that's a slight bit of an issue. There we go. That felt not great because we weren't actually able to like double-sided tape it down or secure it really in any sort of fashion. I kind of just pushed the HDMI board in a little bit more. I don't know. This is a disaster, but we should be able to use this plug it in, and I'm not even getting a red light. This is not good. I'm not exactly sure why it's not turning on unless, guess we got to take it apart. Oh no, I think I'm just an idiot. Yeah, I'm just an idiot. There's a switch on the back that prevents power from going to it. What the heck is that fan hitting? Well, at least it's a good thing that I opened this up. Oh, it's hitting the ribbon cable. That's funny. The ribbon cable is like actually the thing that's making that noise. Okay. I fixed it. And the disk drive works. Look at that. Woo! Okay. Now, I don't think I've mentioned it yet, but the instructions for the Bluetooth controller mod are on this micro SD card with a USB adapter. And I don't want to plug this into anything that I own, that I care about, because while there might not be a virus on here, I don't want to take that risk. So I think I'm just gonna try and figure it out on my own, because I feel like it can't be that hard. I've got my PS5 controller here. I'm going to turn it into pairing mode. Oh my god. Okay, well, I don't know how to get it to 2-player mode, but I literally just put it into pairing mode and it connected automatically. I'm guessing that the button... That's funny. But I'm guessing that this button puts it into pairing mode. So let me grab another controller real quick. Does my Stadia controller still have a charge? No. Darn. Do you think this USB will charge it? I know it won't like play it, but it will charge it. Let's go. Okay. How do I put it into pairing mode? Loading demo. This is actually kind of like the perfect game to test this on, because I should be able to play just like a regular multiplayer game. And like even in like the team selection area, I should be able to see when the second controller pops up. Maybe. Eventually. I think this disk drive may be on its last legs because it is slow to load. But then again, I don't know how bad this game was for loading back in the day. It could just be the game. I didn't own a PS2. Not until I was in my 20s, at least. Holy crap, dude. This is taking way too long to load. I don't know. It won't let me choose the home team. Okay, it's acting like there's another controller. Okay, well, I just took over player 1. Okay, I don't know what the button's for other than to put it back into pairing mode. It would be nice to have instructions, and maybe I can find some online that I'll put up on screen right now, because, you know, it'd be nice if they put just like a picture guide. I don't love you guys enough to risk my computer over this. So it's simple enough. I connected a Stadia controller and a PS5 controller to this without any instructions. I think it's going to be pretty straightforward. I just put both into pairing mode and they connected. I was messing around with this button, but I honestly don't know if that did anything. But you can see right now, Stadia controller is number 1 and this is number 2. And I'm guessing it'll be as simple as turning them on later when like I reset it and it'll just connect. All right, I'm gonna turn this off now, put it back together. Okay, goodbye Stadia controller. Back to being dead you go. Aw, man. Oh, that's my power cable. Yeah, see, I don't like that. Ay. Okay, well, if it works, it works. It's crazy how when you flip the switch on the power supply, it gets power. Put in Freemic boot and our new memory card and turn it on. And then we're loading our card. There's a little OLED screen on here. Sure, it's on the boot card on channel 1. Freemic boot. Oh, wait, it's got Freemic boot on here? Interesting. Okay. I'm going to plug my USB into the USB port down here. I'm going to try to at least. Goodness. I'm just going to update OPL real quick. You don't really need to see this. I'll link Blaine Locklear's tutorial down below if you're wanting to do this part of the tutorial, the software side. I'm not really a software guy, so it's literally the video I've got in the background on this monitor. And here we are, finally. My goodness. In case you're gonna actually do the mods and all of the mods that I've done, pressing select X and circle will open up just like this, and then you can use the D-pad to go through the rest of the menu. The first 3 aspect ratios are in 480p, and the last 3 are in 1080p. 1 is the same as 4, 5 is the same as 2, and 3 is the same as 6, just the different resolutions. You can also change the video mode is just like the different like color profiles. Just keep it on standard. You can change the de-interlacing mode. I always keep it on adaptive. You can change the motion threshold how you please. Scan lines are disgusting. Do not do these fake scan lines unless you are a psycho. I'm just kidding, sort of. And then you can change the position of the screen if it's offset or you want it offset for some reason. And then to remove yourself from the menu, just do the same button combination. If you have the Bluetooth mod installed, you could still do it without having to physically plug a controller in. I think that's awesome. I did dig a little deeper and found that there's actually an application on this USB/SD card. And again, it's not worth it to me to look inside and see what you can do in the application, but you can easily connect 2 controllers, 2 Bluetooth controllers. You can freaking do switch Joy-Cons if you want to. It's going to be pretty much any Bluetooth controller out there. You can pair it to this thing. It does the job, but these things are probably worth it. I've had this for a long time. They used to be 20 bucks on Amazon. You could probably get them cheaper on AliExpress. I'll link both down below, but I highly recommend this thing. They're 25 bucks on Amazon now, probably cheaper on AliExpress. This does the same thing. You just plug it into the controller spot. You can get 2 of these through Amazon for the same price as the mod, and you don't have to do anything to your console. You can also use this in a PS1 or a PS2 Slim. You can change it into all sorts of different PlayStation consoles, however you like. It's not permanently installed in your console. Same thing goes for this memory card. It works for PS1 and PS2. You can put it in any console you want. I mean, I don't know of any internal memory card mods, but just saying. I'll save my full review for the full review video if you haven't watched that one already. Most likely you did, but you never know. It'll be linked down below. The HDMI mod doesn't look terrible in something like the menu here, but I don't know. The more I do these high-speed Edo mods, the less I like them, man. I think it's great for the N64, and maybe that's because it's a 240p signal being upscaled. Like, this doesn't look bad in the menu here. It doesn't look bad at all, but it just doesn't always look great. Now we can go to the games list, and it's all there. These are the games I've got loaded up. Again, the text looks great here. Okay, I've been messing around with this for a while. I don't even know where I left off, but I was trying to like force a higher progressive scan mode, and then it just messed with the HDMI mod too much, and it was like oddly in the other corner. But you should be able to force progressive scan in OPL, and I would keep it at 480p if you've done this HDMI mod. If you aren't doing this HDMI mod and you're doing it through like component cables or something, or like any other retro scaler, it should probably work better for you. But I would probably just force 480p. That way you're not messing with any interlace stuff and your output should look a lot better. Still not great because honestly, this HDMI mod could do better, but it is a budget HDMI mod at the end of the day. The most frustrating part of it is just that it's not really meant for this specific model of PS2. Like physically, fitment wise, it is physically not meant for this console. And that's really upsetting. I really hope they change this. I cannot recommend it in this current state. It should not stick out the back like that. It should actually fit in the console. But anyways, I don't have the capture card plugged into the PS2 right now because the capture card kept messing with the screen on my TV, and I was like putting it like super zoomed in every now and then. So this may not work well with capture cards. Depends on the model that you've got. My Elgato one's been on the fritz for years though. But I can say from here, forcing 480p and OPL looks great, makes it look better. There are some games like God of War 2 that have a progressive scan option in the settings. So I turned that on. But yeah, I'm sure I'm leaving something out in this video, and I'm sorry. There's a lot in this. But this is the second channel, and the main channel will be a lot more comprehensive. And I never really claimed that this was a full tutorial. This is just me putting all the mods together, and you're along for the ride. Maybe you learned something. I don't know. Okay, bye.